Hello and welcome to the round 4 game of the day from Chess on Toast. We're going to look at Magnus Carlsen versus Alexander Grischuk from the FIDE Candidates 2013 in London. I'm Nick Murphy. With me, as always, International Master Lorin D'Costa. So Lorin, tell us about this game.
Hello there. This game is Carlsen's second win in a row, I believe.
Yep.
And what I like about this game is just kind of how easy it was. He didn't seem to play any special, amazing moves. He just played sensible chess, and he beat one of the top players in the world. So here we're going to see just how he did that. And Carlsen, ever the I can play any opening at all kind of guy, decided to play e4, but he doesn't always play this. So although Grischuk would have done his homework, and he responded with e5. So this is actually similar to the DVDs that we've been covering, isn't it, Nick?
It is, yeah. We've covered quite a few e4, e5 openings.
Let's see if Carlsen played one of the gambits that we looked at. Now, the gambits, although they're good at club level, isn't really kind of what we expect to see at the top level.
No, well, we often talk about that black can fall into trouble if they're not prepared, but of course at this level, Alexander Grischuk, one of the top players in the world and has been for many years, is definitely going to be prepared.
That's right. And here he just played knight c6, and instead of one of the gambits that we've been looking at, mainly kind of like bishop c4,
yep,
bishop c5, or something like the Evans
That was the
gambit.
Evans we looked at in one of our DVDs.
Or the Juco piano with c3,
Yep.
black does a developing move like knight f6, and then d4. So those are the other kind of gambits we've been looking at. But here, instead, Carlsen settled for the old favourite, which is the Spanish, or the Roy Lopez. And the idea, instead of trying to kind of mate black on the f7 square,
Yeah.
is actually just to kind of remove the defence of this knight to the pawn on e5. So it's kind of more positional idea.
It's another very popular opening.
Oh, it's massively popular, this opening.
Yeah.
So played by all the world's greats, including Carlsen, of course. Do you play it, Nick?
I don't play this very often. I occasionally uncork it, but very rarely.
Okay, well I did say the world's greats, so we can rule you out then. And black played knight f6. Well, the main move is actually to play a6 first. Just going to quickly show a little trap that you should know, which is if bishop takes the knight on c6, then black should pretty much take with the d pawn. Because if white now tries to win the pawn on e5, black should try to do it, or win it back, roll right now. So how can black do that, Nick?
If the queen went to maybe e7, would that...
Well, queen e7, well, it blocks in the bishop, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It's not...
And I think I can go d4, defending.
Okay, so
the knight.
something like maybe, instead of that one, then how about queen d4?
Queen d4 is the best move, attacking both the pieces, and after, for example, knight f3, black wins the pawn and actually gives check, so it stops white from castling. White can play something like queen e2. And although the queens come off, here we see that black's lead in development, and the fact that he's going to get castled like this, and the white king's a bit... Well, I'm going to put it in red, because I think it's red for danger, isn't it? I don't really like this king on e2. So even though the queens are off, it's still better for black,
so even though it's sort of barely out of the opening, we're only on move 8, white can't castle anymore, and black's going to get better developed. Black's in a better position.
Exactly. So whilst Bobby Fischer himself decided to castle, and black can do many moves, but basically black has to defend this pawn in some way. So something like bishop d6. So anyway, this is for another time.
Okay.
But instead of a6, which allows the main line bishop a4, and then knight to f6, you might think, well, why did he go knight f6 first? Now, this is quite ironic, because basically this will lead to something called the Berlin defence. I don't know if that rings any bells to you.
The only thing I vaguely remember, is that what Kramnik used against Kasparov in 2000, or am I thinking of something else?
That's right, probably most of our viewers won't have been born by that point. But yeah, exactly
showing
right.
My age.
You're very ancient. The dinosaurs didn't know the Berlin defence, but Nick was around to show them. And the idea of knight f6, obviously to attack the pawn, but the reason that we haven't played, pushed this a pawn is apparent. If white now castles, which wasn't played, black takes the pawn on e4. Now, of course, white could go rook e1, but then this is supposed to be not that great for white, because although we can take the pawn back on e5, threatening a discovered attack on the king, black can just go bishop e7, blocking it, and I think it's just going to be kind of equal where black gets the castle.
Yeah.
So to try and take advantage of it, if we go back to knight takes e4, white's best move is actually play d4 and try and smash open the centre. Because if black now takes this on d4, then rook e1, and we have this pin again. But here it's a bit more potent, isn't it? Because we've got this pawn out of the way.
Yeah.
And if d5 trying to defend it, anyone who watches our DVDs will know that this d5 move is kind of the chess on toast key move, isn't it?
It is,
Trying
yeah.
to defend the
It's
pawn.
popped up in quite a few of our DVDs.
But unfortunately here, it's not that great, because after knight takes d4, we're threatening the knight on c6, and we're threatening f3 to take advantage of this pin.
This pinned knight, yeah.
Aren't we? So, whilst this is actually a variation, it's really dangerous for black, and black needs to know what he's doing here. So after knight takes e4, basically the Berlin defence runs d4, and now we see the point of black not going a6. Black just goes knight to d6, moving the knight, but it attacks the bishop on b5.
Yeah.
So if you imagine if black had played a6 and the bishop had dropped back to a4, would the knight be attacking the bishop now?
No, it wouldn't be. But it's quite funny because it looks... we've talked about sort of putting a knight there before and actually blocking in that bishop on c8. So it looks very sort of superficially like a bad move because that bishop on c8 is going to have trouble developing now.
Well,
but
white
obviously,
has to...
yeah.
Well, I was going to say, white has to do something about this bishop. So
Yeah.
normally he takes, but then to answer your question,
Exactly,
black can take
takes
the
with
d
that,
pawn,
and
and now the
bishop's
bishop,
free.
can come out. But of course, d takes e5, and the knight has to move because it's being attacked.
Yeah.
So black normally goes knight f5, and then queen takes queen, king takes queen. This isn't really something that you'd recommend to juniors
No.
because firstly the king's on d8, so it can't castle, and the queens are off, so it's not really super exciting. But this is supposed to be the kind of way for these top grandmasters are kind of looking at this recently, and they think it's something for both sides. So I'm pretty sure this is what Grischuk was going to play against Carlsen. And for anyone who's actually watched top level chess over the past few months, you'll see that Carlsen's actually been using this as black quite a lot. So he must have given himself a little chuckle when he saw Grischuk play knight f6, preparing to go into this position, the Berlin defence, because Carlsen himself uses it.
So Carlsen knew exactly what he was getting himself in for and probably avoided it on purpose.
Well, exactly, yes. After knight f6, instead of castling, allowing this Berlin defence, he just played simply with d3. And in the Royal Lopez, white normally doesn't do that, because what white does is c3 and then d4 in one go. So
Right.
anyone who's watched our DVDs on the Grischuk piano
Yeah.
will understand that idea.
Similar sort of idea.
That's right. But here instead, he just plays a lot quieter, and you'll see that he just plays very sensible. Pawn to c3, I'll show you why. If white castles, black's supposed to be able to equalise with this really annoying move, knight d4.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I know it's kind of moving a piece more than once, but the point is that now, and this is actually what you're going to see in the game, white cannot eliminate that knight, and the bishop's kind of hanging there. Do you think it's not really doing much, is it?
No, it's. I mean, it came out to attack early on, and actually now it's not attacking anything really
That's right.
of value.
In fact, it's being attacked by the green arrow, isn't
Sure,
it? So
yeah.
after knight takes, bishop takes, I don't know, c3, bishop b6. Apparently, this is supposed to be completely fine for black.
Okay.
I mean, black gets to just go c6 and d5, and it's kind of Grischuk piano reverse now, isn't
Yes,
it?
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of Grandmaster games, but white, as far as I know, white's not really got anything. So Carlsen wants to keep all the pieces on, and he played c3 straight away. So we've been talking about that move, how it controls the d4 square and the b4 square. So white can consider all these different pushes now.
And it stops that knight coming into d4 as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
So black castled and white castled, and how black needs to be careful about that pawn. So of course he played d6.
Sure.
And in true kind of beginner, junior level style, white decided to prevent bishop g4. How is he going to do that?
You'd have to put that pawn from h2 to h3, I think.
Which is what he played.
I mean, that looks the position on the board now. I mean, that wouldn't be surprising at junior level, would it?
Not at all. I mean, anyone graded about 100 might have had this position before, probably.
Yeah.
And you think, wow, Magnus Carlsen and Alexander Grischuk have got this in a kind of like a massive tournament.
These are two of the very best players in the world. I mean, Magnus Carlsen, #1 by a long way, and Grischuk certainly one of the greatest players of the recent years.
Exactly. So as it just goes to show how even these kind of openings can be played by the top level. And now Grischuk played a6. Now I'm not really up with my Spanish or Royal Lopez theory, but the whole point of that is he probably should have done that a bit earlier, because now White's idea. Well, I think he presumed that Carlsen was going to go bishop a4, and then black can play something like b5, obviously attacking the bishop. Bishop's got to move somewhere. And black can play bishop b6 and possibly something like bishop b7, d5, rook e8. And it's quite
It looks kind of okay for black.
Yeah, and white's kind of slow idea of playing d3 might sort of bite him back later, because he's not really challenged for the centre, has he?
No.
So although white's trying to play it a bit slowly, maybe he's gone too slow and he's sort of in reverse actually.
I see,
I don't know.
Yeah.
But after a6, Carlsen just took the knight and just played rook e1. And rook e1's a kind of normal move that we want to play here, because not only does it defend the pawn on e4, so white's now looking to play d4, isn't he?
Yeah.
And if he goes there, he'd have a lot of pressure on the bishop and that pawn on e5. So that explains why Grischuk played rook e8, because he wants to solidify that pawn there. So both sides are kind of copying. I mean, you could say Grischuk copied Carlsen because he thought his move was so good, but actually there is a reason for why he's done it. And Carlsen played knight d2. I think he could have gone d4, but I think after e takes d4... by the way, in Chess on Toast, I think you might have remembered, Nick, we always talk about if you can do a pawn exchange in the centre, you should.
We've come up to that point a few times.
And it also opens up this rook, doesn't it? Towards the e-pawn.
Mm-hmm.
So if c takes... And I think the problem is now black can go here with a double attack on the rook and the pawn.
I see, yeah. So you can't defend both of them.
Well, we can go bishop d2. Bishop takes, knight takes. But probably Carlsen wasn't really that interested in this position.
No.
Although it still looks like something for white because he can put his rook on the open file just like this. But after knight d, he just settled for knight d2. And Grischuk thought as black, well, if you're not going to push in the centre, maybe I should. But probably this actually caused his demise. And it's really surprising how bad this actually looks, because...
On the face of it, it looks like a perfectly reasonable move.
Well, exactly. It looks like if white doesn't bother to take the centre, why don't we do it? But what happens after e takes d5 is that it's white's turn to have his rook unleash on black's pawn. So black hasn't got time to do anything like c takes d5, which is probably what he wanted to do, because we win a pawn, don't we?
Yeah.
So going back one move, Grischuk decided to play queen takes d5, which again, on the face of it, looks good.
Yes.
He defends the pawn, and he attacks this one. And although he's got these bad, well, potentially bad double pawns, his activity is quite good. Look, if he gets his bishop out to f5, there's going to be quite a lot of pressure on this, isn't it?
Yeah, and then, I mean, that bishop's the only really sort of non-developed piece at the moment, isn't it?
That's right. But it's amazing how Carlsen just, with a few moves, turns this around. He played knight b3, attacking the bishop on c5. Black went bishop f8. Well, I'm not really sure that's the best square, but I suppose he probably realised that after bishop b6, which keeps it on the nice long diagonal, now white can go c4 anyway, which is kind of similar to the game, but now black's got to be careful that white can't go there and hammer the bishop on b6.
And that bishop's going to be stuck in the corner, isn't it?
That's right. So he went back, and now c4. So now this pawn has got a name. It's not a forward pawn. It's a
backward.
a backward pawn, which means that it hasn't got any friends sort of defending it like this. But Carlsen decided that he doesn't need to bother defending it, because after black moved the queen, he went bishop e3, and he wants to do a pawn break in this position.
Right.
What is it? What pawn move does white want to do to open up the position?
Well, I suppose you want to get rid of that backward pawn by pushing it forwards.
Exactly. And there's actually nothing black can do about it, because he can't play c5, since we'll just have that one off.
Yeah.
So it was here Grischuk went, oh, I don't know, maybe I should try and go c5. So he went knight d7, which is one of those grandmasterly moves that a lot of club players think, what on earth is he doing blocking in that bishop?
Yeah.
But the point is, if he just continues with bishop f5, attacking the pawn, then white goes d4 anyway.
Right, I see, yeah.
And in fact, after this, the bishop actually ends up getting attacked. So
so it doesn't look good for black.
well, probably this is what he should have done. But instead, after knight d7, d4, Grischuk tried to play e4 to attack the knight on f3, knight fd2. But now what does he do with that bishop? There's just not really a lot of scope for him. He's not really going to go back, is he? And he can't play knight b6, because now this is where we get to the tactic stage of the game.
Yeah, very basic pawn fork tactic.
You say very basic. Even 1-2-8s can see this. Wow, amazing. c5 winning the knight with a fork. Excellent.
So the pawn is attacking the knight and the queen at the same time.
So black played a5, and Carlsen played a surprising move a4. Well, that looks positionally really bad, because now if black were to get a knight here, what's that called? It's called
an outpost.
An outpost. So black could consider now this really strange manoeuvre of knight all the way around here and put it on a really good square, but that would take up so much time, and in the meantime white would just fancy his chances of trying to get this pawn with something like queen c2 and f3 possibly to eliminate it. So Grischuk ignored that and just continue with the kingside attack. But look how white's pieces start coming forward, knight c4, and suddenly out of nowhere that pawn a5 is a goner, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been double attacked and only defended by the rook.
But still, I think black thought the fact that he could get some kingside attack, he can go knight d5 and try and push f4. So let's have a look what happened. Bishop f4, that's a really good move, because if white takes the pawn, then knight d5, and as I just said, f4 is coming with a lot of strength, because if that goes there, black can now use this pin, can't he?
Suddenly that bishop that was not very useful becomes quite useful.
That's right. It's a club player trick, that one, isn't it? Bishop takes
it
h3 with the queen down, bearing down towards g2.
On that g file.
So Carlsen, obviously, is never going to allow that, and he went bishop f4. Of course it got attacked, but now queen d2. So it's a really strange position where white is guaranteed to win this pawn on a5.
Yeah.
But black appears to have quite a lot of compensation. But it's funny how the position kind of fell apart for black. Rook b8. Now I think, could he have gone knight takes c6? What do you think?
Certainly on the face of it, I can't see any obvious reason.
I'll give you a clue. Maybe black can do something about that.
Okay.
Or maybe black can do something about that.
So maybe... Oh, right. Okay. How about this? You could take the bishop with the knight. So take that bishop with the knight.
Threatening checkmate as well.
Threatening checkmate. So the queen would have to take the knight, but that leaves the other knight en prise.
And we can win the rook.
Then, yeah. So now you've got...
something like this. It's like a Hoover's been applied to the board here.
Yeah.
But now I would probably say black's better, because although white's got this passed pawn, well, in fact he could probably get away with pushing it. Actually, I've got no idea what's going on in this position, and it looks dangerous to both sides. Black's got this lovely rook and queen all the way towards g2, but if black doesn't sort of stop white getting to a8, then he's lost. So probably Carlsen just wanted to keep control of the position. Instead he went knight e5, which is a really sensible move for attacking two pieces. So you see how the top players are just completely adept to their tactics here. And again, bishop h2. I mean, he probably could even have got away with this. I'm not quite sure what black would have done. Maybe black would have done... Well, black could probably sacrifice on b2 and then play knight takes f4 and threaten some kind of idea like this again. I don't know, it looks a bit risky, but... I don't know, maybe he would have tried that. So again, Carlsen is just so calm. I think that's the difference between club players and like these top players.
Sure.
They don't rush anything. They don't, I can see this pawn on c6 can be captured. They don't just capture it immediately. He's like,
no, you don't.
Well, let's calm down and have a look at what my opponent can do.
Well, they can see that they can make that move. We've actually talked about this on Chess and Toast before. You can see that that's a good move. There's no particular reason why you don't want to do that move. But there may still be a better move on the board.
And also... black has to deal with the fact that bishop g5 might actually win the queen, but amazing, isn't it? The queen can't go anywhere. It can't go to any of these squares. But again, Grischuk probably had rook takes b2 planned with exactly the same idea. Black gets the queen on that file and then threatens to come in on g2.
Okay.
So Carlsen, well, he's not going to miss bishop g5, is he?
No.
And it's the sort of move a club player would see and go, oh, look, I can win the queen. But again, just thinking, is my opponent, does he have anything at all? Right, he's got this desperate rook sack, but maybe it's actually quite good for him. So, again, bishop h2, really calm. And now black's sat the exchange. I think that demonstrates that Grischuk had actually seen rook takes b2 idea.
Right, yeah.
Because he wouldn't have done all that. Who am I to doubt these guys anyway? But actually, what happened is white just slowly crept forward and... okay, black's threatening mate. White prevents the mate on g2. We've talked about that pawn on g2 quite a lot, haven't we?
Yep.
Knight takes e3. A really tricky move. It looks like black's still got a lot of action here.
So you can't just... I mean, you can't take the rook now on a2 because the bishop would take it back, and then you'd have to protect that pawn on...
That's right. It's getting a bit.
So,
it's getting a bit
move
haywire,
the rook
isn't
to
it?
b2,
which defends that one.
Yep.
Maybe black has a trick here somewhere. Right. Maybe black could try something like... Well, he might just go bishop d5.
Yeah.
And how does white defend that one?
No.
And it also does a really good duty on this square. So, yeah, it's pretty similar to the game. But Carlsen instead just dropped his knight back to f3. I mean, he's so calm, isn't he?
Yeah.
And now he took rook b2. But I think
now that idea actually works, doesn't it? Yeah, because the queen's had to move away. Yeah, I see.
So here in this position, it's pretty similar to what we saw earlier, but now the knight is on f3.
Yeah.
And it's therefore
so
protecting
the pressure's not quite as much on g2.
So queen e1. Looks like white's going backwards, but remember, he is actually winning by what is he winning by?
So rook to a bishop,
rook to a bishop. Yeah. And he's got that really fast running pawn over here, isn't he?
So black's double pawns are not going to be able to stop that a pawn.
So black now starts kicking around like this. But in fact, black's completely lost. So after he took that, Grischuk actually resigned in this position. He's an exchange down, which is rook for bishop. and there's not really much he can stop against that.
No.
So against most people, that attack by black would have been pretty strong, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
He put his knight on d5, he looked at f4, he had this bishop all the way raking towards h3, and it looked really dangerous. But Carlsen just diffused the whole thing in his typically cool manner, and that was that really. So
I mean, that win has now put Carlsen after round 4 on joint lead with Aronian on 3 out of 4. Just goes to show why he really is, the highest rated player in history.
Exactly. And to finish off, I'd say that you can actually play e4, e5, and these kind of sensible variations as we saw earlier. Even the best players do it and can still beat good players with it. So club players should take heart from that, basically.
Very interesting game. Thank you very much, Lorin. If you want to know more about Chess on Toast, you can check us out at www.chessontoast.com, and we'll be back tomorrow with Game of the Day from the FIDE candidates round 5.